People laugh about it like get off the computer, stop watching porn. There's jokes. It's really not a joke when it really, completely ruins your life.
Hello, and welcome to Distraction. I'm Dr. Ned Hallowell. Before we begin, I want to give you a quick heads up. There's some explicit language in today's show, so if you're listening with children in the car, you may want to listen to this one later. The topic today is internet addiction. Most of us use the internet all the time to check our email, Google something, and so forth. Today's show is not about moderation, though. Today's show is about becoming addicted. Now, this is a completely new addiction, never existed before in human history. Doctors are treating countless patients for it, but don't even have the diagnostic code for it yet. The new Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the so-called DSM-5, is introducing a variant of it called internet gaming, but it goes way beyond internet gaming. This is people who simply can't go more than a minute or two without being online, without checking their email or sending a text. The disguised voice you just heard at the top of the show is an anonymous woman who wanted to share her struggle. Her husband is addicted to the internet. You're going to hear her powerful story in just a moment, but first, we're going to hear from someone who experienced it firsthand.
My name is Charlie. I'm 27 years old, and I'm a gaming addict. My addiction started way back when I was very little. I have a brother that's 4 years older than me, and when we were young, he tended to be a very big bully. I noticed very early on, though, that I could basically isolate on the computer or a Nintendo, and he wouldn't bug me when I was doing that. So as I got older, whenever I started to get bullied, whenever I needed to just get away from it, I would go to gaming. That continued to escalate as I got older to start including any issue I was dealing with. Was I stressed out because I had homework during high school, or finals coming up at college? Everything made me go game. I'd be gaming anywhere from 8 to 16 hours a day, and honestly, it ruined my life because I couldn't focus on anything else. About July of last year, I sank into a really deep depression, and I stopped doing anything but gaming. After that point, I was gaming 12 to 16 hours a day. I recognized what I was doing. I knew the impact gaming was having, and I hated myself because of it. When I moved to Virginia and took up real estate, the closest thing to a very dangerous situation I ever got to was about a year ago, roughly, after I realized the state that my life was really in. I wasn't accomplishing my goals, and like I said, when I started hating myself for gaming. And I had been prescribed antidepressants before. At that point, I felt like I wasn't worthy of taking them, and so I stopped. And so stopping taking my meds, combined with how much I hated myself for gaming, and then the only skill I had ever learned to deal with any of the emotions like that was to game. So I would hate myself for gaming, and then I would go game more so that I would stop hating myself for gaming until the moment came when I had to stop because, I needed food, or I was just too tired to stay awake anymore, and I would have to stop gaming, and then all of it would come rushing back. And at that point, I became incredibly desperate. I had tried quitting gaming twice on my own, and I failed both times. And so I started to plan suicide. I felt completely hopeless. I had no idea how to get out of the cycle that I had built in my life. I had a very well fleshed out plan for how I was going to make it happen, when in the year was I going to do it, and I got really lucky. My family came and visited, and it was at just the right moment for them to see exactly what the state of my apartment was, because it was being totally ignored, to see just how unhappy I really was. And they kind of stepped in and confronted me about, hey, what's going on here? Because clearly something is not right. And that was actually the catalyst that put me into Restart and inpatient therapy. The biggest thing that I try and remind people that I talk to about internet and technology addiction, even more so than just gaming addiction, is that it's absolutely everywhere. There are way more people that suffer from a technology addiction than will ever admit it, And the biggest reason is that it's normal. And it's not at all uncommon to be walking around and see people completely buried in their smartphone and paying no attention to what's going on around them. And because it happens everywhere, people think that there's nothing wrong with that. But just because it's normal doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy. I always advise people to just be really conscious of how much time it is that you're spending on it with a screen rather than out doing something with people. Check and see, even when you are with other people, are you still kind of not there because you have to keep an eye on your cell phone because so-and-so may be calling or texting and you have to check your email for work and da-da-da-da-da, and you're not actually paying attention to the people you just invited out to dinner. It's a subtle, sneaky disease that'll come up without you having any idea that it's coming.
Unfortunately, his story is not a unique one. This Thursday, we will release a mini episode with another young man, Ryan, who went through the same recovery program as Charlie. Wait till you hear how old he is. My thanks to the folks at Restart and their Internet Addiction Recovery Program, who helped us connect with both of these men. This is a wonderful resource. I was talking to a woman just yesterday whose son was clearly addicted to electronics, who'd gone to a psychiatrist who laughed at her and said there's no such thing as Internet addiction. Well, unfortunately, the mental health professionals out there haven't caught up with the times, and a lot of them don't know of the resources like Restart. So put it away in your brain's Rolodex in case you encounter someone with an Internet addiction problem. Studies show that between 6 to 10% of the population are addicted to the Internet. This time spent in front of a computer has a variety of detrimental health effects, from decreased fitness to spending less time on more valuable activities to spending time with family and friends. People are beginning to isolate themselves from others, which can have very detrimental psychological effects. It's quite a paradox. We're connecting electronically, but disconnecting interpersonally. Another study found that heavy Internet use leads to increased depression and bipolar disorder. It also leads to the proliferation of secrets. In one study, 9% of people admitted to hiding their Internet use from their bosses, friends, or family. Why? People admitted using the Internet as an escape from their problems. Still, research shows that people aren't exactly enjoying spending all that time online. More than 12% of the people surveyed said they were online longer than they intended to be, and they wanted to cut back. Isn't it strange? They're staying online but not wanting to be there, and that's what an addiction is all about. While an Internet addiction can affect anyone, there's a particular age group more vulnerable than the others. According to Stanford University, 73% of those addicted to the Internet are between just 13 and 17 years old. Of course, the addict isn't the only one affected. It can destroy relationships. And what a paradox that is, because you're ostensibly connecting by being online, but in fact, you're disconnecting from the people who matter most to you. And this is what is so pernicious and insidious about this newest form of addiction. Imagine you're about to start a family, but then discover your husband was hiding something. One woman who agreed to speak with us only on the condition that she be anonymous discovered her husband's secret obsession while she was pregnant. Her voice has been altered.
Before I was married, while I was dating, I did know he was into online games and things like that. So he might spend a few hours at night with me, but when I go to bed, he stays up because he's then going to be on the computer all night. Oh my God. I thought it was like normal stuff. Like, he's going to play his games. I'm going to bitch about the fact that he never comes to bed. First, it was like normal. It didn't bother me at all because he didn't play it all the time. It got worse. And more than once, I can remember, trying different tactics to get him to, stop and spend some time with me. It got to the point where I was just plain out nasty. And I can remember specifically one night grabbing pillows and blankets and throwing at him and saying, I hope you have fun sleeping with your stupid game, Over the weekends, I'd be like, take a shower, You know, there was one time where I was giving him a hard time and he got so angry. He stood up and he took his fist and he banged on the desk and it broke the keyboard shelf. And I got mad and I went left for hours and hours and cooled off and came back. And, you know, he says he's sorry and he gets off for a day or two and then he's right back on. His dad got sick. That probably coincided with him playing more. His dad passed away. He was playing more, but I thought it was normal. You want to give somebody some space because, of course, everyone goes through things differently. But then next thing you know, we're well beyond that. It's gotten worse. You know, we're engaged and you're kind of stuck. Now I'm wondering, am I even making the right decision here because this isn't stopping? And then the gaming stopped, but other things started. It was message boards. It was Facebook. It was online shopping. It was hours and hours of online stuff and porn. I mean, it was anything and everything that you could get online and absorb, he would do. What I learned over time, specifically porn sites and things like that, are coded or named different names. But if you click on it, it's going to take you to a totally different type of site. So, you know, why does everything have to be in secret? And that's when you start to really go, there's a serious problem if he's hiding this from me. He started buying things. And so then I found that he had another bank account and was having about 40% of his check directly deposited into a bank account I knew nothing about so that he could fulfill his online shopping habits. I can't even say it's just like one thing. He's a gamer or he's into porn. It was the whole internet. It was anything. And, you know, the first time I ended up kicking him out of the house, my daughter was 3 months old, and I found that he had a Facebook page with a fake name. His relationship status was, it's complicated. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And I ended up waking him up at like 2:30 in the morning going, are you kidding me? Like, look at this. There's nothing fucking complicated. You have a ring on your finger. That's not complicated. That's called married. I kicked him out of the house. So he was pretending to be another person and having this online life. And I'm sure there's so much more that he did that I have no idea about. He went to see a special doctor and ended up being diagnosed with ADHD and depression. And so we kind of thought, okay, so maybe this has something to do with your need to focus on the internet. The reality is he was only shifting things around and trying to figure out how to hide it better from me. Internet addiction seems like the lines are really blurry, that people can easily kind of get out of it, that it's not a real thing. It's totally a real thing, man. It's kind of embarrassing. My husband doesn't want to spend any time with me. He'd rather be on the computer. Like, you don't want to say that. See, I could start crying now. Ask me how I feel. I would say, I don't like thinking about it. I don't like going back there to think about what it was like then. But I think it probably happens a lot more than people think. And I think that there's something wrong. And I mean, that's what it's, you're really being abandoned by your spouse when they are addicted to the internet. Like, you're left behind. You're left with all the responsibilities. You're left with handling everything. And emotionally, you've been abandoned. Yeah, it was terrible. It's hard. It's hard. So my advice is, like, open up, talk about it. I think that there's a lot of people out there. I just don't think they talk about it. Let people know what's going on in your life. There's people around that can probably help you.
My heartfelt thanks to our guest for talking with us. In case you're wondering, their marriage did end in divorce. It was deeply painful for her, and it took a lot of courage for her to come on and relive her story. We, and I personally, thank her very, very much.
50% of all divorces involve digital technology of some sort.
That was Dr. David Greenfield. He's the founder of the Center for Internet and Technology Addiction. Back in the 1990s, Dr. Greenfield was one of the first to recognize that the Internet was going to be a problem for some people, much like the temptation of drugs or alcohol can be.
Back in the mid to late 1990s, when the Internet was really starting to heat up, I, like many people, noticed that when I went online, I felt pretty captivated. And this was back when there wasn't much going on online. But the experience of being online just seemed to be very time-distorting, very distracting, very dissociative, among other things. And I think there were some mood-altering aspects. But we had no research whatsoever at the time. So I went ahead and did a study where we looked at about 18,000 people. And we looked at their Internet use habits. And this was, again, back in the late 90s. So Internet was very different then. This is when everybody was doing dial-up, and we certainly didn't have Wi-Fi, and the smartphone didn't even exist. But even then, we found that, yes, in fact, a large percentage of people were experiencing use patterns that were very consistent with other compulsive or addictive behaviors and or substance use.
What kind of people come to you looking for help?
Well, the people I see, of course, are the people where it's gotten to a point where it's really interfered with their lives.
Right.
So it's impacted their schoolwork or their work or their legal status or relationship or health in some way, or they've been in an accident,
right.
or, God forbid, they've caused an accident. I'm not going to see people who are like the average person who is using it too much, which is probably most of us. They're not going to come see me.
Right.
We have to find other ways to reach the masses with regard to the technology. Just stand on a line in a bank or anywhere.
Sure.
And nobody can be present without a sort of dose of distraction that they're using with their devices.
Yeah.
Smartphones are really the hypodermic of choice at this point, because they're not only a portal to the Internet and to everything on it through social media and Google and all the other platforms, but they supply notifications. And we know from basic neurobiology of addiction that the anticipation of a reward is actually quite elevating of dopamine. So people actually look forward to the distraction that they're going to get and that hit they're going to get dopaminergically. You have to take control over the technology, because left to its own devices, no pun intended, the technology will take control of you.
Right.
Turn off or limit your notifications, because what we know is that hit you get from the expectancy of getting that message or that update or that email or that text or that Instagram shot is what keeps people checking it. So essentially what the smartphone becomes is the world's smallest slot machine. And you keep checking it because every once in a while something good shows up or something important, and that keeps you impacted over and over and over again. So cutting off the notifications can help, because then you're only going to check it when you need to check it as opposed to when it wants you to check it.
Right.
The other thing you can do is have tech-free days, like have a day where you leave it home or leave it off, or leave it in your car. So I will purposely leave it. If I'm going out to do an errand, I will actually leave the phone and not take it with me. And believe me, I actually feel some withdrawal when I do that.
It's interesting because to do this interview with you, I left my smartphone in another room. And normally when I'm sitting here doing these interviews, I have it right next to me.
Yeah, there you go.
And when I noticed I didn't have it with me, I felt a twinge of discomfort. But now I'm really glad I don't have it right next to me. So
because it's distracting.
Yeah, and also you discover that it's not so bad. In fact, it's kind of nice not having it with you.
So you can set aside a time during the day that you're going to check your phone once an hour. You can leave the ringer on for a phone call.
Right.
But, nobody uses these things for phone calls anymore.
Right.
They use them for other things.
Right.
Because the big thing you'll hear is, well, what happens if there's an emergency?
Right.
Well, if it's an emergency, I suppose people could call you.
Right. Well, I'm so glad to have you as a friend and colleague. You really are a pioneer in the field. And
thank you.
And one of the world's leading experts, Dr. David Greenfield. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you, and thank you so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure to talk with you as well.
If you would like to get in touch with Dr. Greenfield, we'll put a link to his website, which is virtual-addiction.com, on our website. Here's an idea that would definitely fall under the category of non-traditional treatment. Imagine being prescribed an illegal drug to kick your internet habit. It's not such a radical idea. In fact, Baltimore author and writer Baynard Woods tried it. He didn't come up with the idea himself. He read about James Fadiman's work. Fadiman has been studying psychedelic drugs, including LSD, since the 1960s. He claims that microdoses can improve focus. Here's what he said, quote, "The focus wasn't like the amphetamine compulsion that comes with Ritalin or Adderall. It couldn't be satisfied by cleaning the floor or digitally screaming at a stranger on Facebook. Instead, I found myself more deeply absorbed in that zone we all hope to be in, where the doer and the deed dissolve together into the pleasure of pure work." End of quotation. He goes on to say, quote, "The most remarkable effect of the microdose, which I noticed on the first day, was that it broke or significantly disrupted my addiction to the internet." End quote. The curiosity and experimental nature of this man, I would not advise you all to start taking LSD to gain focus. First of all, it's not legal. And second of all, we need a lot more research because there certainly can be extremely negative consequences to experimenting with LSD. At the same time, I hope the research does continue because these psychedelic substances may turn out to have significantly therapeutic effects. We're just not there yet, and I'm afraid I can't recommend that you try that. Nonetheless, it's fun to bring these non-traditional interventions to your attention. Okay, we want to help. Did something in this show grab you? Do you know someone or you yourself who are wrestling with this problem? Because, gazillions of people are. Don't feel alone. This is, and short of addiction, just the habituation problem, where you're doing it too much. Get on that before it runs away from you, before you start losing time at work or losing friends and relationships. This is an insidious process, like most bad habits. And abstinence is not an option. We have to learn how to use our electronics moderately because we really can't abstain from them. Even the family or friends of the person who's addicted need advice. So here's another suggestion. ITAA, or Internet Tech Addiction Anonymous. Can you believe that exists? 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, it wouldn't have existed. This is modeled on a 12-step program similar to what AA uses. You can reach them through a link on our website, netaddictionanon.org. Again, I just think it's remarkable and wonderful that these resources have grown up. And I also marvel at the power of electronics to command us to the point of actually leading to an addiction. If you have suggestions on how to limit your time online, we'd love for you to share them with us. This is a problem we're all grappling with, and it's new territory. So please, if you've figured out a way to kick the habit, not kick it, but moderate the habit, please email us at connect@distractionpodcast.com. You can also use that email for questions, comments, or other new show ideas that you'd like us to do. connect@distractionpodcast.com. Distraction is produced by Collisions, the podcast division of CRN International. Collisions, podcasts for curious people. Well, that's our show for today. We're going to leave you on a positive note from Dr. David Greenfield.
Your listeners need to know that on the other side of that undistracted experience is connection, creativity, intimacy, productivity. These are all on the other side of that. I think this is neurobiology, basically.